Hi everyone, and thank you for downloading this League 2 season preview edition of the Brunton Bugle. Just before we start, as you can see, this is a bumper long 2-hour episode, so you might want to consider either going on a very long walk with the dog or breaking it up into a few listens to make it a bit easier. There was a few issues with the sound quality and levels in this recording, so you might find it goes a bit funny in places, but it should still all be audible and fine to listen to. A big thank you once again to the Cal United Supporters Club at London Branch, who are one of our podcast sponsors this season. The London Branch is open to members living anywhere, not just London, so you can join if you live in Berlin, in New York, in Cockermouth, anywhere like that. And they help to keep exiles in touch with all things Cal United, as well as organising some great social events and trips to away games. You can find out more about the London Branch on their website at www.carlisle-londonbranch.org. Thanks again and enjoy the show.
Here we come, blue and white, and we're looking good. You'll be in for a fight, and we fight pretty good. Getting goals is our job, and we get goals good. Looking good, we are Carlisle United.
Carlisle United, the team that's on the ball. Carlisle United, the team for one and all. You're looking good, and we're with you all the way. You'll hear us singing every time you play.
Hello everyone, it's that time again. Yes, it's the Brunton Bugle pre-season, also pre-season really, it's a season preview episode where we look ahead to the campaign and see how we think the teams in League 2 are going to get on this season. I'm joined by both my co-hosts today, by Dan McLennan and Mike Booth. Lads, how's it going?
Not bad.
Yeah, it's going good. I'm looking forward to making some predictions that later get laughed at as the season goes on yet again. So.
Yes, it's inevitable, isn't it, really? Some of the predictions, I can't even remember some of the predictions we made last season, but yeah, let's suffice to say they weren't great. I think the only one we all got right was Southend going down. That was it, I think.
I think I suggested Scunthorpe would struggle.
You did actually, and in fact, I think you did, but you changed your mind, didn't you? I think, or maybe you taught me out. I can't remember anyway, but yeah, it's fairly accurate as it turned out, wasn't it? But there you go. Yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through each team by team. Basically, we've given each of us a club, all except Cal United. Of course, we don't bother with that one. We do that one at the end together. And basically, we're just going to go through some of the key things in terms of who players they brought in, who their manager is, and how they got on last season, how they've got on in pre-season, how we think they're going to get on, really, generally. And then at the end, we've got a few predictions we'll throw in as well, which, of course, as Mike says, will probably make us look a bit stupid come next summer. But there you go. Well, let's get straight into it then, lads. So, first club up, we're going alphabetical order here. It's the top of the pile. It's probably the only time they will be top of the pile. Hey, all season. It's Barrow. So, Dan, you're first up. You're going to cover Barrow. So, take it away.
Barrow with Lancashire postcode and Manchester training base.
Cheshire training base, let's be fair here.
No, they're going to Manchester.
Are they? I thought they were in Knutsford.
No, apparently they've moved somewhere near Manchester.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. Yes. Summer signings. Well, basically, it's a who's who of ex-Carlisle players in the main. Obviously, Zanzala Farman, Tom White, who was on YTS here, and Mark Ellis. They released a few, but no one really stand out. I don't think. I think it was sort of the chaff of the squad.
You definitely say they've strengthened, wouldn't you, when you look at this squad compared to last season? Yeah.
But no, they've got quite an old squad from what I can see. Just pulling up I think the fourth oldest according to Transfermarkt. So
yeah.
They're obviously sort of going down the tried and tested sort of experienced route. They'll have been happy last season. They stayed up. Took to quite close to the end of the season, but they had just enough. Southend sort of hit their wind just that little bit too late.
Yeah.
I've not really looked at the pre-season because whenever I see BBC Cumbria tweet about them, I generally ignore it. but I think it's going to be much of a muchness for them. Mark Cooper's manager now, isn't he?
Yes, he is. Yeah.
Good manager, possibly. But there's something about Barrow, and I'm not just saying that because it's Barrow. There's just they just seem to sort of go through managers a bit, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I've got to say for Mark Cooper, he's got some sad news this week. I think his dad died, didn't he? I think the other day. So
yes, correct, Terry.
Yeah, not a great start for him, obviously, the season, not in terms of football, but that's going to possibly affect him, which is quite sad. And if we just focus back on in terms of who they've brought in, Farman for me stands out as the key one for them because we saw how good he was, and having a good goalkeeper at this level can make a massive difference really to your team. And we were sad to see him go. We all agreed, he was a good player, and it's one of those things. They've offered him a 2-year deal. We've probably only offered a 1. I know Ellis as well at the back as well. Look, I know he tends to bounce between League Two and League and the National League, doesn't he, with his signings and the way he goes, but he's a good player as well. I've always liked Josh Gordon from Walsall.
That was a decent signing.
Yeah, I think they've strengthened fairly well. They've lost quite a few, not brought in as many. So I don't know, in terms of the squad, looking maybe a little bit thin. Would you say, Dan?
I'm just looking through here. I would say they're quite similar to ourselves in that if everyone's fit, the first 11 isn't that bad. With a couple on the bench as well, but once 2 or 3 injuries and suspensions come in, they might just look slightly light.
Yeah.
I think that they'll be looking to consolidate.
Yeah, that's got to be the aim for them.
Yeah,
really.
I think if they finish sort of around 12 or 14, that area, they'd be more than happy. It's second year syndrome sort of thing, isn't it?
Yeah. It's similar in the way to what happened with Leyton Orient, wasn't it? And when they came from the National League, they finished 17th the first season, 11th the next. That's the aim, to make 6 or 7 places jump up for them. I think we've sort of been in agreement. I don't think they'll be down near the bottom. I think they've got too much quality in that squad. It's having the fans back there as well. I'd imagine Holker Street's going to be a place that not many teams are going to like to go to. And if the fans are excited about the fact that it's the first season, actually getting to watch the team again,
and
will probably make a ruckus, won't they?
Like we've mentioned with Farman being there and his thunderous kicks in a busy Holker Street,
up against that Irish Sea Gale as well.
Yeah, there's a few away teams will feel it.
Yeah, definitely.
I feel they've got a few players that can play football as well. We're saying that it's going to be a tough place to go, but I think they've got a decent mix of sort of brutes for the tough games and actual footballers for the other games.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. How do you think Zanzal will get on there?
Well, he got injured the other day, apparently.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, I don't know how serious, but apparently he didn't last too long.
Oh, that's.
But no, I reckon sort of mid-table, and you're probably looking at they're going to lean on Mark Ellis, aren't they? So he's probably going to be the key man.
Oh, you're going for Mark Ellis as the key man. I'm surprised. I probably wouldn't have had that. In terms of the betting odds, there you go. Betting odds, the best you can get is 66-1 on Boyle Sports. My advice: keep your money in your pocket. They're not going to be champion for the title.
Little piece of advice: if you put £10 on Barrow to win the league, you lose £10.
Exactly. It's the old joke, isn't it? But there you go. Thanks for that one, Dan. Okay, so next up it's me. I've got Bradford City. They're an interesting one, Bradford, aren't they? Because they are a big club at this level. I think we'd all agree with that in terms of the fan base they've got and the history. But last season, I don't think any of us really thought they'd do that well. But I don't think anyone was. Well, yeah, you're the exception there, I think. I might have as well, actually, to be fair. I can't remember. But I don't think anyone thought they would be in a relegation battle, did we?
No,
I didn't anticipate they'd be down near the bottom. And they had a legendary manager there, obviously, in Stuart McCall, players. For them, he was, probably one of their greatest ever in terms of popularity. Didn't really work out. He was obviously sacked at Christmas. They brought in the 2 lads from the youth team who did really well. And then they gave him a 2-year deal, didn't they? And I always thought, getting a bit ahead of yourselves there. Because you do sometimes find those people who come up who haven't really got much playing experience and do well at first. When things start to go wrong, that's when they struggle, isn't it? And that's what happened. They picked up 1 point from the last possible 21, and that's why they ended up getting rid of them. And they brought in Derek Adams as manager, and there's a man who knows how to get promotion at a club, isn't there? throughout his career. I mean, you'll know Dan from his time up in Scotland as well. You follow the Scottish League as well. He's a legend at Ross County, isn't he, in terms of what he did there?
Yeah.
And at Plymouth, he did a good job. And I mean, what can we say about the job he did at Morecambe last season?
Well,
Absolutely incredible. Was it on probably the smallest budget in the EFL, you'd say? And they managed to get them up in trying times as well with COVID and things like that. I think he's genuinely a really good appointment by them. What I would say is he doesn't particularly like big voices in his dressing room, does he? We saw what happened with him, Kevin Ellison at Morecambe, and Ellison's a legendary player at Morecambe, and he was quite happy to fall out with him and kick off, wasn't he? And we saw what happened when they played each other last season. Obviously, Adams got the last laugh in terms of that. But I think it was sort of known, wasn't it? Even going into those playoff semis with Morecambe, that he was going to Bradford. It wasn't publicly said by anyone, but essentially we all knew he was going to be going there. So that's just the way that one went. So yeah, in terms of summer signings, Adams has got an interesting way about it. Someone I know was mentioning to me, and they said, it strikes me that he seems to think he's still in charge of Morecambe. The way he's signing plays, he's not really gone for big names, but Andy Cook's the one that obviously we're going to focus on because he's ex-Carlisle. He's not got the most exciting record at EFL level, has he? He's done okay at Walsall and okay at Mansfield. Did all right actually at Bradford last season when he went there on loan, 8 goals in 21 games. But he's 31 in October now. This is probably his last big chance to show he can really do it at EFL level, isn't it? Because his record in non-league is unreal. He's goal every other game basically. So he's basically the main man there now. They lost Danny Rowe. He went back to Chesterfield for good money. So he's the one I think to look out for. In terms of other signings, Jan Sanogo, he's been at all 4 clubs that Derek Adams has managed. So he's someone he knows he can rely on. Alex Gilead, obviously another ex-Blue there. It's his third spell with them. He's one of the few players who actually did all right at Scunthorpe last season. And another player that Adams knows and trusts, Oscar Frelkeld. I mean, I think right back was a bit of a problem position last season for Bradford. So bringing him in definitely make a difference. And the squad looks solid. I mean, you've got Niall Canova came in January from Plymouth, and he's a good performer. We all know what Elliot Watt can do. I don't know what you guys think, but I think Watt maybe struggles a bit in the rough and tumble, doesn't he? I don't think he likes the physical side.
I think we've said before he's one of them who would probably suit League One better than League Two, haven't we?
Absolutely. And we all know he's got quality on the ball, and his set pieces are, up there with Callum Guy's really in terms of quality. So overall, I think it looks a pretty solid squad. Not many standout star players, but I think that's what Adams likes. I think he likes a tight-knitted one, doesn't he?
He's quite a direct manager, Adams. Don't get us wrong, his teams can put it down and play, but I think they're set up very, very solid. And when you look through the squad that he's building at Bradford, you've got Cook and Angle up front, who are big lads. Yeah. Powdy O'Connor knows what he's doing at the back. He's a nasty piece of work, isn't he? And you've got Niall Canavan beside him. Jan Songo will probably sit in front of them, and that's a spine of a team, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I can really see them going for the playoffs. I'm not sure they've quite got enough to get into the top 3, but they've definitely got enough for the playoffs.
I mean, for me, they're one of them teams, and there's quite a few teams that are put in this category. And when I was looking at the odds for the top scorer at the end of the season, there's a lot of proven goal scorers in the league this season, and I think their season will be made or broken by if Andy Cook's getting the goals. If he's not getting the goals, they might not. And there's so many other teams that I'd have in that category with them as well.
It's a lot of pressure on Cook's shoulders, really. But as well as that, I didn't mention him there before, but obviously Charles Vernon was excellent for Grimsby a couple of seasons ago at this level. Didn't quite work out for him at Burton, but you'd imagine he's one who wants to show what he can do at this level again, and hopefully can do this season. Like I said, I can just see them being in the playoffs, really. And they've done pretty well in pre-season. They've won 6 out of 7 friendlies, including victories over Accrington and Doncaster, both League One sides. The only defeat was actually against Chesterfield, but I think they're quite well fancied in the National League. They've thrown a bit of money at it, like a few clubs down there. So, one thing to note from them this season, they're going to be wearing a white home kit. It's basically to mark 40 years since their third-tier promotion season in 81-82. So they're going to wear white home kit with sort of gold and maroon trim, and their usual sort of gold and maroon home kit is actually going to be their away kit for this season. So that just goes to show you, Carl United, you can wear different home kits. It's possible. I still think we should have wore blue and white hoops this season to mark 60 years since our first promotion. But let's not get onto that one, shall we, Dan? Because we could talk all day about that kind of thing. So there you go. Right, who's up next? I think it's you, Mike, isn't it? I think it's your first one next. So your first one is Bristol Rovers, a team I think a lot of people fancy, don't they, this season?
Yeah, they do. And the one for me, they really could go either way. I mean, I had them penned down. A lot of people were fancying them, and I had them sort of penned down as I don't actually think they're going to do that good. And then they signed Brett Pittman the other day, who, again, I'd have them in that category with Bradford, where if he's scoring the goals, they're obviously going to do well. But they've signed 13 players altogether, which I don't think any other team in this league has.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Obviously, Nick Anderton from us as well. Aaron Collins from Forest Green.
That is a good signing.
Yeah, Harry Anderson from Lincoln. Paul Coots from Fleetwood, another good player.
Harvey Saunders from Fleetwood's one that we really fancied, didn't we? And he's gone there.
Yeah, and another one is Trevor Clark, the left back, who he went to Rotherham from Ireland a few years ago for an undisclosed fee. I think it was 6 figures. He's a 5'5" left back, and he was expected to be Rotherham's first choice left back in the Championship, and he got injured, and then he sort of wound up at Bristol Rovers now. So I think he is probably going to be their first choice left back ahead of Anderton, because they've paid money for him as well. So and they've signed Mark Hughes, the centre back from Accrington.
He's a good player.
And he turned down a new deal from Accrington to sign for Bristol Rovers as well. So they're certainly not going at it half-heartedly, are they? So,
I mean, let's talk about the elephant in the room here.
I was just about to say the very same words.
Why are you avoiding talking about him, Mike? We all want to know what legally, let's not talk into too much detail about what he's been up to, because he's been let's just leave it at that, probably, really. But.
Well,
Clint Hill's been on media duties for a week.
Yeah,
that tells you all you need to know.
The man in question, Joey Barton, obviously, he's on trial in December. So things like that off the pitch could maybe be a little bit of a distraction as well.
The fact that he's got 2 court cases as well ongoing, it's just that for me, that would concern me. I mean, he's not done too bad as a manager though at Fleetwood. He did an okay job, didn't he? I mean, seemed to fall out a little bit maybe with the board at the end, but
he was well backed though, wasn't he?
He was well backed, he was, but I think he's well thought of as a coach, I think.
But as well, he inherited John Sheridan's team, which were doing very well, and I remember John Sheridan was quite hard done by when he got sat there. But yeah, I mean, like I said, just one of them teams that really could go either way this season. They really are. Pre-season, they've played Melksham Town and drew 1-1.
Everyone seems to be playing them. I've got 2 teams that play them as well. They've had a great pre-season, Melksham Town.
Yeah.
Absolutely loving it.
Haventon Waterlooville, who they also drew with, 0-0. Plymouth, who they drew with 1-1, which I suppose is a reasonable result. And Oxford United, who they actually beat 3-2. And that was Brett Pittman's first game, and he scored a brace in that one. So
it's his former club. I think he played for Oxford for a while, didn't he? I think.
Yeah.
Seem to remember. I mean, they're 11-1 second favourites. That's the best odds you can get with them on various people. Bet365, Sky Bet, all kinds. I think I agree with you. I think it's as much as they are second favourites, I think it's massively in the balance to whether they can click with so many players coming in, whether the off the field issues with their manager come back to haunt them potentially. I mean, maybe exactly. Clint Hill might end up proving to be a good coach for them. Possibly, you never know. It's one of those ones, isn't it? Dan, I don't know what your thoughts are on them.
Like we say, I mean, you look at the quality of some of the players they're signing, they should be in the mix, but the off-field is, in some way or form, it is going to affect them, I would think. So it's really hard to say with them, eh?
It's worth noting as well that last season they did finish rock bottom of League One, and they were absolutely awful. So, they obviously needed to make those new signings. But yeah, we'll see where they go.
I think they've got fairly rich owners as well, haven't they? I think there's a Middle Eastern guy, I think, and he's got big ambitions for them, but it's a challenge for them because Bristol City have done so well in recent years to actually do well. So yeah, we're touch and go on those guys, I think it's fair to say. Up next, we skip Carlisle United, obviously we do that at the end. Next is Colchester United, that's you, Dan, our opening day opponents.
Yeah, they were starting to struggle last season. Then Mullins and Tisdale sort of came just before Easter, I think it was. And they got enough points to stay up in the end. They probably enjoyed Southend going down, being their local rivals. Mullins has got the job permanently. I've just got one of the previews up on them, and it says talented keeper Shamal George.
He did well there last season. I mean, I know he had a shaky spell with us, but I think he enjoyed the game against us in particular because he had a blinder that day. But they're a club, aren't they? They've been well backed by the owner. They've got big debts, but it's not debts to worry about because they're basically all owned to the owner, and he's no intention of recalling them. Yeah. But he sort of pulled back in terms of investing in first team players, and he's sort of focusing on the youth, hasn't he, in recent years?
They were one of the first teams to say like certain players are getting released, we can't afford them. Last season, and then you look at some of the players have signed. I mean, they've absolutely raided Ipswich. I think they took 4 players from Ipswich, and they're all quite well-known names. Freddie Sears, Alan Judge, Cole Scouse, Luke
Sears has been there before, hasn't he?
Yeah, and there's some solid names in there.
And they're at something like 13, 14 favourites.
Yeah, they're a strange one. They're the sort of team similar to Barrow that if the first 11's all fit and playing, I think they'll be quite decent. But again, a couple of injuries, couple of suspensions, etc. I don't think they've got the biggest of squads either. I'm just looking on Transfermarkt. I think the squad size is only 19 officially.
Yeah. But I think they rely a lot on their under 23, so there might be a few players who potentially come through and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So,
but no, one of them teams who, if everyone's fit and playing, they'll have some decent results. But if they lose a couple of them, it could be a bit.
Do you think they'll improve on their 20th finish?
A little bit, yeah. I would think with the likes of Judge and that,
Yeah.
You would hope so because. I know Scouse is getting on his 35, I think.
Judge was the one, wasn't he, who got in trouble with a referee last season, wasn't he, I think?
Yes.
He was a naughty boy, I seem to remember that one.
Yeah.
There you go.
But, no, they should be similar to Barrow, I would say, for me.
Oh, there you go. Okay, let's move on to the next one, Crawley Town. I picked this one for you, Mike, because I know how much you love Crawley. You love the world's biggest Greggs that we saw there. We don't actually know if it's the world's biggest Greggs, but it appeared to be. It was absolutely massive.
Definitely.
This is, anyone who's a regular listener will know, me and Mike went down to Crawley a few years ago so we could tick it off as a ground. It was one of our penultimate game in League One, wasn't it?
What, did I not go like?
So you went as well. You were already down there, I think, were you? But there you go. And it was, it finished 0-0. It was one of the worst games ever. And you were staying down there, Mike, and I think you were too, Dan. And I had to get a bus back to Liverpool. Got back at 7 in in time to start work at 8. That was not a pleasant day, put it that way. But there you go.
I think I was on the sleeper train back that night.
You would have been back to Carl. So you would have had a nice night's sleep. I had some psychopath murderer probably sat next to me on the National Express back to...
No, I didn't go back with you for that one. I stayed in London, as you clarified.
Very good.
So Crawley, obviously, the manager, John Yems, who, if you've seen some of his post-match interviews, he's...
what a star.
Yeah, he's certainly a bit of a case, isn't he?
Grumpy.
They finished 12th last season, only 5 points behind us. But they've made 4 signings this summer. And obviously, to pick out their best one is probably Jack Payne from Eastleigh, because the other signings, they signed Owen Gallagher, a 22-year-old left-back who's played 9 games in his entire career for Burton Albion, and Harry Ransom and Blondie Nana Nukeu, who don't even have Wikipedia pages. So if you haven't got a Wikipedia page, I don't have a lot of hope for you, to be honest.
Do you think if Hanny Ransom's through on goal, he likes to chip the keeper?
not Harry Ransom. Not it doesn't. No, not
I'm having it. I'm having it every day of the week.
He could batter a few defences.
Hang on. Let me give you a little drum on for that one, Dan. Yes, I'm having that. You say they've only signed 4, Mike, but they've only let 6 go, including reality TV star Mark Wright, who now appears to have a job presenting on Sky Sports News, and they've got rid of all the actual proper journalists there.
Well, wasn't it brilliant that when they beat Leeds 3-0 in the cup, one of only 2 appearances Mark Wright made, and this is absolute housery of the top level. They put him on as a sub with like 5 minutes to go in that game because they were hammering Leeds, taking the piss, and they chuck on a Towie star. Absolutely brilliant.
Incredible, isn't it?
Top level housery.
It's absolutely incredible. Well, there you go.
I was going to say the pre-season they've sort of not far off us really, where they've been beating teams like Walton Casuals, Hawley, and Horsham, and they beat West Ham's under 23s, but they also drew against Burgess Hill Town. So what you can read from that, I don't really know.
Is it not Burgess?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, I think I used to live down that way, so I think it is Burgess Hill.
Yeah.
I mean, they do have a bit of experience in their team, though, don't they, Mike? I mean, let's pick out the obvious one here. Danny Bullman, 42 years old and still playing the EFL. That's quite incredible. And actually, when he played against us, he was one of their better players last season. I think it's fair to say. But yeah, they're a weird one, aren't they? Because I mean, over the last few seasons, I've always thought they're going to struggle down near the bottom. I think last season was the first season where I finally said, no, I'm going to stop doing this. They're going to do all right. And I was actually right. I thought they finished mid-table, basically. Tom Nichols was probably one of the few players who actually looked any good against us at Brunton Park, though, because they were awful that day. They were basically on the beach, weren't they? Surprised maybe that they kept hold of him, possibly. You would maybe expect someone else coming for him.
Yeah, you'd think so. But, yeah, I mean, for me, I'm going to get sucked into the trap, I think, and I'm going to say bottom half because, yeah, they're not doing enough for me. There's a few teams who are quite clearly having a go, and there's a few teams, like I say, who have proven goal scorers, and they don't really.
Yeah. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how they do. I have a feeling they'll be okay because I think they've got enough experience in there. And I think in having someone like Yems as manager, he's just someone who just does the job, and they'll be solid enough, I think. So, so I think we're going for sort of lower mid-table, aren't we?
Yeah, they're certainly not going to be in danger of going down, but they're just not going to be doing much for me.
No, wouldn't expect so. Okay, well, let's move on to the next one. I think the next one's me, and it's Exeter City. When are they going to make the step up from being a team that's sort of the bridesmaids in the playoffs to the team that wins promotion? I mean, out of the last something like 5 seasons, I think they've been in the playoffs final 3 times, and they've lost in the playoff final 3 times. They really need to make that step up, but I think it's going to be a challenge for them this season because they've lost a couple of key players in. See, Ryan Bowman's the obvious one, ex-United player. He's gone to Shrewsbury Town, but they've also lost Randall Williams to Hull City, and he looked a really good player as well for them. So, can they make that step up? I don't know. The key for me is they've got to keep hold of Matt Jay up front, who's been such a good player for them over the last few seasons. And I think as well, at the back, getting Pierce Sweeney to return. I've got Pierce Sweeney down as their best signing this summer. Now, people hearing that might be thinking, hang on, he's been there for years. Yeah, he left in the summer. He turned down a contract, went to Swindon Town. What a smart move that proved to be. He had his contract cancelled after, I think, about 2 weeks of being there. And he's basically turned back up at Exeter and with his tail between his legs. And they've said, go on, then you can stay. So I think having him back is a big one because he's such a good experienced campaigner because they've lost. Tom Parks has obviously gone to Livingston in Scotland, and Jake Taylor, I think he's gone to Stevenage. So having Sweeney back there in defence is a big plus for them. Because other than that, you look at it, they've signed Giovanni Brown from Colchester, who's a player who always seems to do okay against us, typically, but he's just flattered to deceive. I think they expected big things of him at Colchester, and he never quite stepped up. In terms of goalkeeper, they had some issues last season, didn't they? I think didn't they have a lad on loan from Reading, the Icelandic lad, who played against them for Morecambe 1 week and then had his 7-day loan cancelled to go to Exeter on loan.
Yeah, it was an emergency keeper situation, wasn't it?
Yeah, so I think they've had a few issues there. So this season they've signed Scott Brown from Port Vale, who's coming in as goalkeeper coach. So they've a player coach, that I should say. So they've got some backup there if they need it. But it's Cameron Dawson they've got on loan from Sheffield Wednesday, and he's someone I think a lot was expected of in a few years ago. He was an England youth international, but he's never quite kicked on. I think he's obviously had Kieran Westwood ahead of him at Sheffield Wednesday for a long period.
He was keeping Westwood out the team for a little bit when Westwood had fallen out with their manager, wasn't he? So
yeah, but he's dropped down the pecking order again now. Even though Westwood's gone, they basically decided to send him out on loan to get him some game time. So it'll be interesting to see how he does. Their coach is obviously Matt Taylor. One of two Matt Taylors in charge. That'll be an interesting one when they play each other in the league, won't it? He's at Walsall with Matt Taylor. He took over from Tisdale in 2018, and like I said, out of his 3 seasons, he's finished in the top 7 once and lost in the playoff final. The other 2 seasons, they've finished outside the top 7. He's in danger of potentially becoming one of these people who does okay, but just can't quite make the next step. And you do wonder if he can't do it this season. Even if he's offered the chance to stay at Exeter, would it make sense for him to move on and potentially try it somewhere else? Because you have a real danger of stagnating, as Tisdale himself found out, didn't he, I think, and hence why he ended up leaving. And he's sort of bounced about, really, hasn't he, since then? So, so like I said, last season, they were sort of in the top 7 position for much of it, but they basically ended up finishing, just outside the playoffs, and really wasn't the campaign they were expecting, hence why the likes of Bowman and Williams moved on. Pre-season's been a bit hit and miss. 4 wins against non-league sides, 3 defeats. Now they've been against Weston-super-Mare was one of them, Bristol City and Shrewsbury Town.
Must have had a mare there.
I'm not playing it for you, I'm sorry. You're not having it. You're not having the drum for that. The one big concern for them, though, is they've lost players already, but they've also got clubs after some of their other young stars. Josh Key, I think Sunderland made a £1 million bid for him this week. They've turned it down, but you'd imagine they're going to go back in for him potentially. And Joel Randall, is another one who's attracting big clubs. I can't really tell with them. The squad still looks fairly solid, but I have a feeling they'll just miss out on the playoffs again. I don't know. I just don't think losing someone like Bowman and losing a couple of experienced players at the back as well. I know Parks has sort of fallen out of favour there, but I'm just not sure. I
kind of feel like we've been here before with them, though, where they lose a few players and you think, they're going to tail off a little bit, but they don't. They always seem to manage to keep it together a bit.
They've always got young players to come in, haven't they? They're basically the sort of the benchmark at this level for producing young players that you eventually sell on and make some money. Speaking of money, they've used some of the sell-on money that they got from Ollie Watkins going from Brentford to Aston Villa last season to buy a big screen that's going to be installed at St James Park. So they'll have that for the replays. I mean, it's a tiny little ground there now, isn't it?
I met a bloke years ago, and he was like the head of coaching development or something at Exeter. And like he was saying that like their whole philosophy at the club is like that they know that they can't attract the best players, but they invest so much in their coaching and training in making the players that they have sort of better, really. And you can see that with quite a few players who have just gone there, and they seem to just come on leaps and bounds, and then obviously, sod off somewhere else on a free transfer.
That's the way to do it. And they also what they do is they don't just give players 1-year deals; they give them 2-year deals and give them a chance to develop, send them out on loan to some of the non-league clubs nearby and that kind of thing. So hopefully we're going to start to see that at Carlisle United, where you see like the likes of Dixon getting longer deals and stuff. So that's the dream, isn't it, for us? I think it's fair to say. So yeah, that's Exeter covered. Up next, it's me again, actually. I don't know why I've done it in this order. It's a very weird choice of me. Forest Green Rovers, the key thing for them is they've obviously got a new manager coming in Rob Edwards, and it's his first full-time role. He was in charge of AFC Telford a few years ago. I think he did okay there, actually. He's been in charge at Wolves under-23s as well for a little bit. His last job was actually England under-16s manager. So he wants to build on the good work that Cooper's done over the last few seasons. Mark Cooper, that is, obviously, in putting together a side that consistently challenges for a top 7 finish. But they've not been particularly busy in the transfer window this summer. I mean, Jack Aitchison has come back in on loan from Barnsley. He was on loan from Celtic a few years ago, went to Barnsley permanently, but he hasn't really managed to hold down a place there, so he's come back out on loan to them, so they're hoping he'll do well. Beyond that, Regan Hendry from Rafe Rovers. I think you've mentioned it before to me, Dan, I seem to remember. Young midfielder, maybe someone else mentioned it. He's done really well at Rafe over the last few seasons. I think he was one of the players of the season at Scottish League One level at some point with them.
Yes, he was on my renowned Scottish list of players who could do a job for Carlisle United.
Oh, there you go. So he's done pretty well at Rafe, and he's earned his move to Forest Green, and I think he's one that could be a big player for them.
Who they also have another of my list that moved there, Nicky Cadden.
Yes.
So he's one of the best left wing backs in the league for me.
Yeah, him and Bailey Cargill are two brilliant players out there. Yeah. When you look through the squad, they've generally kept hold of most of it. They've lost Odin Bailey. I think he's gone back to Birmingham, hasn't he, after his loan spell. But I mean, they're even though they are the joint second youngest squad in the division alongside us and Exeter City. I mean, but despite that, you look at the squad and you think there's still some really good players in there. Mm-hmm. I can really see them pushing for a top 3 finish. I mean, Jamil Matt is massive for them. That's the one key thing, though. You saw last season, they were doing so well, but then they tailed off at the end when Matt picked up that. I mean, I'm going to advise people here. Look up Jamil Matt's injury that he picked up. I think it was against Bolton. It was live on Sky. It's horrific. If you're very squeamish and don't like seeing people's fingers sticking in the wrong direction, don't look it up. But if you like that kind of thing, look it up, because oh my god, it was not nice. I think I remember sending it to you, Dan, and you were like, "My god, that's it's disgusting, isn't it?" It was a nasty old injury. Oh god, of course you did. But there you go. So keeping him fit is just massive for them, isn't it? Because without him, they look a bit lost still. They don't even look like they've really added. I mean, they've lost Archie Collins as well, I think, and he was a fairly big player for them. He was a useful player up front. Abu Adams is still there though, and he's a good player. Personally, I think because they've kept fairly. It's basically how Edwards does in his first management job. That's the key thing, because the squad's good enough. It is good enough to finish top 3 if they really want it. It's whether maybe Edwards changing the ways they work could affect them potentially. But I personally think they're going to finish top 3. That's the way I'm looking at it. Just the way it looks. In terms of their pre-season, though, they haven't really set the world on fire. They beat non-league sides. Here we go. Melksham Town, them again. Yate Town and Yeovil Town. But they lost the championship sides, Cardiff City and Swansea City, and then drew 0-0 with Leamington Spa. One interesting thing I spotted, that their chairman has come out this week and encouraged clubs in the Football League to stop getting sponsorship from gambling firms. It's something I 100% agree with. I think football clubs rely far too much on. I know they give good money and that's the reason, but for me, they just rely far too much on it at the moment, and it kind of does make me happy that at the moment, Touchwood, Carlisle United don't have, other obviously than Sky Bet being everywhere because it's the league sponsor, we don't have sort of gambling sponsor at the moment, do we? And I think personally I'd rather keep it that way, but that's a personal opinion there. So there you go. Okay, up next, Dan, it's you, Harrogate Town.
Yeah, decent first season last season. Simon Weaver and Paul Furlwell have been rewarded. They have 3-year contracts now.
Yeah.
Not too much transfer moves. Brought in half a dozen and maybe 3 or 4 have went out, including Mark Beck, who's gone back to Conference North. I think he's one of them players who's just not quite good enough for the league, is he?
No.
You know, but the 3 that sort of stood out in the signings, got Mark Oxley in goal, who's solid enough. Rory McArdle from Exeter is an experienced head at the back for them.
Really good experienced head, that, definitely.
And the interesting one was a player we've been linked to a couple of times, Luke Armstrong from Salford.
Son of Alan, the former Middlesbrough and Stockport player, isn't he?
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting signing. I don't think he'll have been cheap either.
It's an interesting one, though, because he came on, if you remember the game against Salford at Christmas that the fans were allowed to go to. He's the one who came on for Ian Henderson for Salford, and he was absolute doggo. He was dreadful. Yeah. He looked like a fish out of water, and I wonder if that's the reason why Salford had just gone, all right, let's send him out on loan, get him a bit of experience first, and get some game time in a club where they can afford maybe to have him playing a bit more often.
The thing that stands out is the size of the squad. They've got a very, very small squad at present. I think they've got 18 players.
Yes, 18 players. But the average age is the oldest in the division, isn't it? So there's experience there.
Yeah. I mean, the likes of Falkenham are 30-year-old, Muldoon's 32.
Muldoon doesn't look 32 the way he played against us. He was excellent last season.
Yeah.
Really was.
I mean, I think it'll be pretty much of a muchness from them. Maybe improve a couple more places, and if they make a couple more signings, they're one of them teams that with a bit of luck and that, they could maybe get a sniff.
They've got a management team that's done well. They were pretty solid. I mean, they started really well last season, tailed off, but they had a small squad. You would expect that. They're going to work with a small squad again. The key for them is avoid any injuries. That's the massive thing, surely. If they can do that, I think I agree with you. I think they'll do okay. And you never know if they can get on a good run. And it's one of those things. If you get on a good run and come Christmas, they might look and say, right, this time we're going to get a couple of players in on loan. I think actually last season they got Josh March on loan, didn't they, from Forest Green? But then he picked up an injury after about 3 or 4 games, and I think that hit them quite badly. Yeah. So yeah, I tend to agree. I think they'll do okay this season. I think I wouldn't expect them to struggle, put it that way. Up next, it's the return of an old foe of ours, Mike, Hartlepool United.
Yeah, so they're I think maybe trying to keep up with Barrow for the most ex-Carlisle players, because they've got quite a few. They've got obviously Gary Liddell, Martin Smith, the 2-game wonder, Olafella Olamola, and they've just signed Mark Cullen today.
Yeah.
So
the new Port Vale.
Yeah, so I think, in sort of some of them players, I think they've strengthened in key areas. They signed Jake Lawler, the big centre-back from Harrogate, who's like 6'6" or something. Absolutely.
He's a big lad, isn't he? Yeah.
Yeah. So I think they're sort of strengthening in the areas that you need to strengthen from the conference or whatever you want to call it now. Obviously, last season they came fourth, and there was that dramatic playoff final against Torquay, wasn't there? Which their keeper scored, and it eventually just meant nothing. I'd have them down to do all right. Manager, obviously, Dave Challoner, who was at AFC Fylde for a bit, managing there. He's only, I think, late 30s, early 40s. He's played for Bury largely in Tranmere as well.
Famously, didn't he have the world record for the longest throw-in at one point?
He did, yes.
Did he?
Because at Tranmere, they used to have this thing where they deliberately cut like holes in the advertising boards, didn't they? So he could get a longer run-up. And I think these days, actually, his throw-in wouldn't look very long, to be honest. It was a weird one, wasn't it? It was massive back then, but I think someone like Coyote would comfortably beat him these days. So, yeah, he's an interesting one. It's difficult for Hartlepool, isn't it? Because they've got the issue that their season finished a lot later than pretty much anyone else in the division, didn't it? Because the playoffs for the National League, what was it, mid-June, was it, I think, or something like that?
Yeah, they've had a lot of trialists in the recent friendlies. I got told Olamola and Cullen were there, so I kept an eye on them for a few days, and they did have a considerable amount of trialists. It's always good to see trialist A, B, C and D, etc., isn't it?
I miss those days. It's boring being a stable club that has a fairly solid squad, isn't it? Really? There you go.
Well, their pre-season as well, they lost 2-1 against Blythe Spartans, but they beat Dunstan 5-0, so it's one of them. But they're the only games that I could actually get results for, so I don't know if
Dunstan is equivalent to us playing Penrith, to be fair.
Yeah. But I don't know why they seem to have had such a short pre-season, but there you go.
I think Hartlepool's aim is staying up, and that'll be it.
I know. I think they will. To be fair, I don't think that they're anywhere near as bad as some of the teams that we're going to get onto, who will certainly be right in the middle of that dogfight.
Yeah, I'm having a look here on Odds Checker, which is where I keep getting all the odds from. Hartlepool United aren't listed on it, so they've clearly not updated it since the end of the season. I seem to remember their odds are quite long. I think they're shorter than Sutton's, but they're still fairly long.
Or maybe the bookies know something that we don't, and they're not letting people bet on it because it's just they're going up.
Yeah, not fair enough, is it? There you go. I think they'll be okay. I think they're solid enough, and Challoner seems to be a decent manager. They've added a couple of good experienced players in there. I mean, like we said before, Gary Liddell, we know what he's like at this level. He's a solid, dependable player. Yeah, I can't see them struggling too badly. Probably lower mid-table, maybe. Just keeping themselves just about out of trouble is what I reckon will happen.
Similar to Barrow last season.
Yeah. I think that they've probably been a little bit better than Barrow, I think, because they're a bit more stable. Although they've got the same problem that they're having to bring quite a lot of new players in, aren't they? Because Barrow lost a lot last summer, so there you go. Up next, Leyton Orient. Interesting one. They've just slowly, steadily been improving since they got back into the EFL a few seasons ago. First season back, they finished 17th. Last season, they finished 11th. Off the pitch in terms of management, they've had all kinds of issues. Obviously, the sad passing of Justin Edinburgh just after they won promotion back to the league. His assistant, Ross Embleton, took over and did okay, but then they bombed him off for, I think it was Carl Fletcher or something like that. He lasted about a month, so they brought Embleton back in, and he was doing okay last season, but I think they're fairly ambitious down at Orient, aren't they? I think they want to get them back into League One, and he was bombed off in the end, and they gave the job to McAnuff to the end of the season, and he got them sort of just in close contention for the playoffs, but again, they just ran out of steam at the end of the season. And when you look at the squad makeup of the last couple of seasons, it's quite impressive that they finished as high as they did, because they didn't make a huge amount of additions from the side that got them up from the National League, and you often find that teams that do that struggle a bit, the exception being, of course, ourselves in 2005-06, but we just added a couple of little bits of quality into our squad then. I think the key thing for me is they've got an excellent manager in Kenny Jackett. I think he can make a huge difference to them. I mean, I know towards the end he was a bit of a joke figure at Portsmouth and was struggling a bit, but his credentials are there to be seen, aren't they? I think
straight away, one of the eye-catching signings was Darren Prattley.
I've got him down here as their best signing. I picked it out because
just like sort of a captain in the middle of the pitch.
Absolutely, especially when you lose someone like McAnuff, who's obviously retired now, and he was brilliant for them last season. But in terms of like Jackett, like I said, there he's got 3 promotions and 2 EFL trophy wins before it. Well, one of them was before it became a bad thing. And sadly, that was against us. But the other one, when it became something we don't talk about anymore. But I mean, like I said, every club he's been at, bar maybe Rotherham, where he didn't last very long, but they were a bit of a mess then. He's fairly well liked. At the end at Portsmouth, he didn't end particularly well, but he did a decent enough job there, keeping them solid in League One. But as you mentioned there, Dan, Darren Prattley, over 500 appearances. He's only 36 years old. I thought he would be older. And he's always a player. I always thought I'd love to see him at Carlisle because he's such a good footballer.
He played a lot of games for Charlton last season, so it's not as though he's there for the pay packet or anything. You know, he's still playing regular football.
And obviously Jackett knows him from his time at Swansea. I remember him back when he was at Swansea. He was a brilliant player for them. He really, really was. Other than that, the other standout signings for me, I mean, Omar Beckles has finally signed for his hometown club. He's from Leytonstone, but he'd never played for them before. He'd had a lot of spells in non-league sides, but he's also played for Accrington, Shrewsbury and Crewe, and he's been sort of consistently playing for those teams over the last 3 seasons, and I think he'll be a big boost at the back for them in terms of experience. But up front, they've signed Harry Smith from Northampton, who's 6'5". He's just an absolute unit, basically. So I think that's probably quite telling in the style they're going to play. Jackett is quite a direct manager, generally. But if it works, doesn't it? Look, last season we were fairly direct, weren't we? And if you can pull it off, brilliant. That's exactly what you want, isn't it? In terms of the squad makeup overall, I think keeping hold of Lawrence Vigouroux was a real coup, because I think there's a lot of bigger clubs who were keen on him. But he signed a new 2-year deal, I think. So he was probably one of the best goalkeepers in the division last season.
The Cypriot lad's quite good, isn't it?
You know what? I've got him down here, and I've mentioned the fact that he's obviously Cypriot international. Hector Cipriano.
Cipriano, is it? Yeah.
Yeah, he has a bit of bite in midfield, but he's also got, I think, a few issues in terms of his discipline, hasn't he? I think he got sent off towards the end of last season. I think he's one maybe in terms of that. He does have a few bans under his belt. The worry for them, though, is the fact they've lost 3 good attacking players in Danny Johnson, Connor Wilkinson and James Brophy. 3 big players for them to lose in one go over the summer. The squad's a little bit light at the moment, but I'd imagine that they're likely to add a few players before the end of the transfer window.
It wouldn't be a surprise if we got a couple of loanees off likes of Tottenham and West Ham.
Dan, have you been checking my notes? I haven't sent these to you. 'Cause exactly what I got, Dan. I said basically they're probably waiting on a couple of players from London clubs who are maybe playing for them at the moment because their squads are fit after the Euros. That kind of thing. So that might be what they're waiting on. Like I said, last season was solid, but if unspectacular. Pre-season, been quite impressive actually. They lost their opening game to Dundee, but I wouldn't read too much into that because the Scottish clubs are always ahead of the English clubs in pre-season because they start a lot earlier, don't they? That's a brilliant tie, that though. An away trip to Dundee, I would have loved to do that, wouldn't you? You always love those, Dan, the Scottish games. But other than that, they've picked up draws against West Ham and Spurs, and they finished off with a good win against Gillingham, who I think are quite fancied in League One this season. So if they can keep that form going and get a couple of signs again, I think Jackett's the kind of manager who might be able to mould a good tight squad there and maybe an outside shout for the playoffs, possibly.
I was just going to say they're probably one of those teams that you would probably say 8th to 12th, but if it clicks, they could just get in there.
Definitely. I think that they're a side that let's save our predictions. We've got those at the end, so I won't say too much more than that at the moment. But in terms of odds, they're right up there. They're the 6 favourites. You can get 16 to 1 on them winning the title. We saw last season Cambridge United were a surprise, runaway winner. Well, not runaway in the end, but surprise winner of the league. Sometimes it's a club you don't expect that gets up there. You never know. There might not be a bad shout at 16 to 1 to win it. You never know on that one. Okay, up next, Dan, you've got another one of the teams that are the favourites. Third favourites, in fact. Mansfield Town.
The great underachievers. 21st and 16th with squads that should have been far higher.
Oh, definitely.
Last couple of years. Nigel Clough now. He's got the pedigree.
You'd argue he's possibly the best manager of this division, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and they showed a bit of an improvement while he was... They obviously had last season wrote off and, he was just using it to make his decisions on who to keep and who to get rid of. Usual round, there's always plenty of players come and go at Mansfield. One that did stand out was Nathan Bishop on loan from Man United.
Play we were after, allegedly.
Yeah. And, we've got Danny Johnson in from Orient, Ollie Hawkins from Ipswich, Rhys Oates, who was good for Hartlepool last season. I know there's some big names left, the likes of Cook, Maynard, Riley's. Did he retire? Riley?
Yes, he did. The other Joe Riley did retire, yes.
Mal Benning, etc. I think under Clough, we're going to see a lot better Mansfield.
Big squad there, 29 players.
Yeah, I'm just looking at that. I was just counting up there, and they've got a massive squad, but that's no bad thing, is it? Not
necessarily, but it's sometimes hard to keep a squad that happy because they're not a young squad either, to be fair. They're one of the younger squads. I got them mixed up with someone else for a second there, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they do. I mean, Stephen Quinn's a good addition, isn't he, as well? I think you'd argue that. Yeah. Someone obviously that Clough knows well from his time at Burton. But
I think surely this is the year they've got to be up there.
Top 3 or playoffs, you reckon?
Oh, we'll wait till the predictions at the end.
I think we know he's going to be in Dan's top 3. I think we know there. He's not giving anything away. But no, I mean, they've made, like I said, some good additions. George Lapsley as well is a really good player for them. And I mean, like you said there, they made an improvement. We beat them 1-0 in one of those games the fans were allowed to in December. And I've got to say, they were a good side. They gave us a few problems in that match. So, I mean, obviously they tailed off a lot. But like you said, he was just trying to work out. He knew there was no chance of a playoff push. And he was just trying to work out exactly who and what they were going to keep and what they were going to changes they were going to make. So yeah, there's Mansfield Town for you. Who is up next? It is Newport County, and it's Mike.
Yeah,
another perennial underachiever.
Yeah, well, they've made 11 new signings, including goalkeeper Joe Day, who went to Cardiff a couple of years ago. He played for Newport for years and racked up hundreds of appearances. He's come back, and Ed Upson as well, who played quite a lot in Championship, League One sort of level.
Do you know that sounded like Ed Upson?
Yeah.
That's best shouted at him when he was defending as a youngster. He's so good.
Yeah, but he was released from Bristol Rovers, so you're sort of wondering a little bit like what's what's going on there. But yeah, I mean, they're one who I think last season none of us thought that they'd do as well as they did. I mean, certainly because they lost quite a few players in January, didn't they? And we thought that they'd tail right off, but they still finished in the playoffs. Obviously finished fifth, all in all. So yeah, I mean, I'm, to be honest, expecting them to be much the same again in and around the playoffs. It's a god awful place to go. Like,
I've still got to tick it off, so I'm not looking forward to that to Tuesday bloody night again.
I've got to tick that off. But their pre-season, they lost 5-0 to Llanelli Town in the Welsh League Cup. But I think that was kids, because the very next day they played against Blackpool and won 3-1. So they'd probably play the senior players for that one, and they beat Chippenham Town 2-1 and lost 2-0 to Cardiff. So
it's interesting the way some teams have got quite small pre-seasons this year, haven't they? I just noticed that. It's
they really do.
Interesting the way it goes. Looking at their squad here, I mean, some of the names obviously stand out here, don't they? Like, we've got to mention him, haven't we? Lord Voldemort himself, Kevin Ellison, 42 years old. Yeah. I love the fact that he hadn't actually agreed a new deal in pre-season, and he was playing as a trialist. A 42-year-old Kevin Ellison on trial, and he did the little sign me up celebration when he scored, didn't he, to the manager. I think that was a little joke. I think there was always going to be a deal agreed, I think, for him. The one thing, Patrick Almond's there. He was brilliant a few seasons ago. He's not getting any younger. He's 33 now. I didn't actually realise he was that old. He's tailed off a bit, hasn't he? He's not quite hit the height everyone expected.
Yeah, pretty much. He's just never really had that 20 goals plus season, has he really?
Yeah, I think he had it once, didn't he? But he's not quite followed it up since then.
Yeah. But they've signed Timmy Abraham.
Tammy's younger brother, isn't it?
Yeah, Tammy's younger brother on loan from Fulham. And he's one of them loan signings, isn't he? If he scores a load of goals for them, because
do you reckon there's a third brother called Tommy?
Yeah, well, it's looking like Abraham might potentially be their sort of main goal threat, if you like. I don't know. It's hard to tell from this stage, but you know, they're another one where if they're getting a striker that's going to score them 20 odd goals, that'll make or break the season. Yeah,
I've always liked Matt Dowden, who plays them as well. I think he's a really good player.
Yeah,
but I tend to agree with you. I think they'll be up and around the playoffs again this season. Obviously. Yeah. We'll see what I put in my predictions, but I've probably just given something away there, but there you go. Okay, up next, Northampton Town. So that's me. Not a great season for them last year. Obviously, they won promotion up to League One through the playoffs, thanks to points per game, getting them in there. And our old friend Keith, I'm sure we'll get onto in just a minute with you, Dan, didn't do the greatest job in terms of stabilising them at League One level. He was given the axe in February. They gave the job to John Brady, his first full-time job. He'd been under 16 and under 18 coach at the Cobblers. And as a player, he generally played in non-league, but I think he was most famously at Rushden and Diamonds, wasn't he? I think he was a good player for them for about 200 odd games. But I think he faces a big challenge to get them back up to League One at the first attempt, because they've had a busy summer. They've signed 11 new faces, but there's not. I mean, most of the signings are much of a muchness. I've picked out Jordan Flores as the one that stands out to me, because he's an interesting player. He started out at Wigan, didn't quite make it there. Had a few loan spells, including at Swedish side Ostersund. Sorry.
That's where what's his chops went, wasn't it?
Brian Rake, yeah, he was manager.
Richard Offyong as well, I think.
Richard Offyong was there, yeah. And they tend to get a few English players, don't they? I think was Brian Rake manager there, Dan. I seem to remember he was.
I think so.
Yeah, some sort of player coach manager type thing. Yeah.
But yeah, and then he actually went to Dundalk in Ireland. Now Dundalk have been like the big side in Ireland, haven't they, over the recent seasons? They got to the Europa League group stages, didn't they? I think a couple of years ago, and played Arsenal possibly. I think in the group stage, I seem to remember. But he did well there, and he earned himself a move to Hull. But he's not really managed to get into the starting lineup at Hull, so they've sent him out on loan to Northampton to get some game time. But I think he's one they do think quite highly of. But other than that, they signed goalkeeper Liam Roberts from Walsall, who's experienced head between the sticks. He's got 150 appearances for them, so decent enough signing. Paul Lewis is one that stands out. Actually, he's had a decent career at Macclesfield, Cambridge, and last season at Tranmere he played most games for them, actually. So it's quite a surprise he ended up leaving them. He's got a bit of a goal for it as well, so decent enough sign for them. But I mean, on first glance, looking at the squad overall, I think it's probably weaker than the one that won promotion to League One. Sorry, Undercurl. Jack Sowerby's there, obviously ex-United player. I don't think he tends to play as far forward. I think Dan, I seem to remember he's playing at centre back a couple of times for them. It's a bit of a waste for a player of his ability. You'd think.
He seems to have played all over the pitch, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's got a couple of own goals for them. I think he's got an actual goal for them. Yeah. A name that might be familiar to Carlisle United fans is Benny Ashley Seal. You'll probably remember him if you like to pretend that the EFL trophy does exist. He scored a hat-trick for Wolves under 23s in that competition we don't talk about.
And
I mean, he was excellent that night from what I've been told. I've not seen it myself. But a lot was expecting him at Wolves. He didn't quite make it. Northampton paid a fee for him and he's played 23 games for them so far. He's not scored.
I wonder if they let that hat-trick count.
Possibly.
Because I remember when we played Blackburn and they tweeted that it was something and then they were like, oh no, it's not a real match.
Weird one, isn't it?
Yeah.
So there you go. But no, he's struggled to score in his 23 games. He's not scored a single goal for them yet in a first team game. League game at least anyway. So you'd hope you want to kick on. The key for play for them probably is the long-serving midfielder Sam Hoskins. He's into his 7th season at the club. His experience is vital. I think he's got well over 200 games for them. Big player. I mean, I know you've got a few mates who are Northampton fans, don't you, Dan? And I'm not sure what their expectations are this season because they've got an inexperienced manager in there and they've made so many signings. I would think consolidation.
Yeah, a couple I've seen talking about it, I would say consolidation is the word. Let's be honest, I think they fluked the promotion. I'm not just saying it because of who was manager. I think the only reason they went up was they were kept very fit.
Yeah, Curl's pretty good at that, to be fair.
Yeah. I'll give him that. And I think they weren't very good last season, full stop. And I think they'll just be happy to stop the rot and maybe consolidate to go again in a year's time. Yeah,
pre-season wise, they've not had a great pre-season at all. They did beat Birmingham City 3-2. That's quite an impressive result, but it's a rare highlight. I mean, you'd expect defeats to West Ham and Nottingham Forest, but to then lose to Stamford and AFC Rushden doesn't bode very well. And by all accounts, they were first team squads that went for those games. So, like you said, the key for them is consolidation, because if they get off to a bad start with an inexperienced manager in charge, they could get dragged into a relegation fight potentially. I mean, prediction-wise, in terms of odds, they're round about mid-table, so I think most people think they're going to be all right. But there's always one side that gets dragged into it, isn't there, that you don't expect? I mean, it could well be them. It could well be them. Okay, up next, come on, Dan, it's your turn to have a 5 or 10 minute rant about your favourite manager ever. It's Oldham Athletic.
Oldham, goals. That's what Oldham is. Scored loads, conceded more, and finished about 18th in the end.
Just a crazy club, weren't they, last season?
Yeah, and I think in Keith they've probably got a manager who sees a lot of games like that anyway. So they have a couple of good players, you know. Bamboula's obviously a decent player.
He's a brilliant player, isn't he?
I think they're going to miss McElhaney's goals.
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
I don't think Hallam Hope will score as many.
He's a good signing for them, though. A lot of our fans have mocked it, but I think he's a good signing for them. He'll do all right there.
Every man just wants their partner to love them as much as Keith Curl loves Hallam Hope. To be honest, that's all we ask for in life. To be honest,
still remember the fact that he had the greatest first touch we've ever seen at Barnet. The worst game ever.
Nicky Adams dislikes that statement.
There you go.
Nicky Adams, who's now a right wing back.
Yeah, he did okay against us last season, didn't he? In that position.
The thing with Oldham is they're one of the teams where the off-field could potentially derail them. If you have a quick Google of David Wheater in his recent interview,
I've not seen that. No.
Doesn't paint a very good picture.
No.
And I think they could really struggle this season.
Yeah, I really like that Davis Kelly had done as well for them, but there's been a lot of rumours that other clubs are interested in him too, so I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up...
There's a couple, him and Bambula, I mean...
Well, Bambula played for Middlesbrough in pre-season, didn't he? He had a trial there.
Yeah.
Just incredible. I mean, he's under contract. You don't... For a player that good, surely you say to the club, make us an offer, or sod off. Yet they let him go on trial. That doesn't really suggest they were keen to keep him, does it?
No, I think it's going to be a long season at Boundary Park.
I think Alan Sheehan as a signing is a decent one.
Yeah, he's getting on now, but...
player coach, isn't he, I think?
I don't think he can do it on his own.
No.
And that's the problem. They're very light in midfield. Very, very light. When you look at the squad, they've got 4 players listed as midfielders, and one of them, Nicky Adams, is a right wing-back now. So.
Yeah. Also in goalkeeper, they've only got one goalkeeper at the moment.
Yeah.
Good experienced keeper, Luke
Weiler. Yeah.
Luke Weiler, that's the one, yeah. He's a decent keeper, him, so that's a good signing, but with no backup for him, it could have a situation like what Exeter had last season, where they're scrambling to get someone in after he gets injured.
Yeah.
Potentially, so that's the concern there, isn't it? So, there you go. So we're thinking Oldham potentially could be in trouble this season.
Yeah.
Up next, Mike, you've got Port Vale, the team that we all tipped to do well last season, and we all looked incredibly stupid as a result.
Yeah, well, I don't want to be bitten twice now, but I mean, obviously last season they started terrible, but they got Daryl Clark in February and they got like a 44% win rate, which is pretty damn good considering, what he sort of inherited. Again, they've signed Jamie Proctor for their token ex-Carlisle player.
Got rid of most of them, didn't they?
Yeah, exactly. They got rid of most of them. But they've made 12 signings altogether. So, they've been busy. And I think Clark's judgment, you've got to trust, given sort of what he did. They signed Tom Pett as well, who was at Stevenage for a good while. Aaron Martin.
Should notice they've let 15 go, though, haven't they? So they needed to get players.
Yeah, exactly. They've had a total overhaul. And they're one of them as well, similar to Bristol Rovers in that sort of they've made that much of an overhaul. It's how long it takes to click.
Yeah, that's the key thing, isn't it, really? And I think Mal Benning's a decent signing from Mansfield, actually, as well. He's a good left-back. Pett, as you mentioned, obviously, he's a good player. It's going to be interesting to see how they click quickly, but clearly Clark did a decent job there, and he knows what he's doing. He think he's found a club where he's happy, hasn't he? And
I mean, they signed James Wilson as well, who was my tip for the top goal scorer in the division last season. So, if you want to lose some money with the bookies, stay tuned for more top tips later in the episode. But their pre-season, they beat Newcastle 6-2. Newcastle Town, that is. Stafford Rangers.
That's cheeky. Come on.
They lost 2-0 to Stafford Rangers. They lost 1-0 to Fleetwood, 2-1 to Sheff Wednesday, lost 2-0 to Notts Forest and beat Chesterfield 1-0. So the pre-season isn't a lot to go off, really. But for me, I'd certainly be expecting top half.
Interestingly, obviously Tom Pope, a long-serving legendary forward, left this summer. I think he's gone to Congleton in non-league.
Yes, I read that the other day.
Seems to be quite happy there, though, doesn't he? I think he's got 35, 36 now, so probably happy to get out of the full-time game. But there you go. That's Port Vale. Thanks for that one, Mike. Up next, Rochdale. It's the first of the shambles clubs, I think it's fair to say. And interestingly, I've managed to get both of them somehow in this list of teams. They've done so well to be at League One level for so long, haven't they, for a club that small? But, all good things come to an end, don't they? And they've struggled massively last season. And they were not helped by the fact that off the field they've become a bit of a circus, I think it's fair to say. You're going to touch on that in a minute, Mike. We'll come to that one because you've got a contact there, a friend who's a Rochdale fan. Interestingly, obviously, Barry Murphy left his role as manager toward the end of last season. Interestingly, he's turned up at Manchester City. He's managing their under-23 team. I think the Elite Development Squad, they're called. Interesting, that one, because he seems to do okay as manager there.
There's a bit of a story behind that, in that he resigned from Rochdale and he wanted compensation, even though he'd resigned.
and he was threatening to take the club to court over and all the rest of it. But he had the job at Man City lined up anyway. So it's like, why are you trying to...
I mean, that's absolutely shitty behaviour, that, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So they're probably well rid of him, I think it's fair to say.
But, well, the story with him, it's quite a story. So around... sort of at the back end of last season, they had a fans forum, and one of the questions was, when's Brian Barry Murphy's contract expiring? Because nobody seemed to know. And the board, the CEO, sort of said, "Oh, it's expiring at the end of the season." And Brian Barry Murphy chipped in, "No, it's not. It's got another year to run."
Oh, God.
And it turns out that, like in sort of September, October, they had like a decent run where they won like three on the bounce and extended his contract, but they didn't announce it. And then they went on a terrible run of games and then didn't want to announce it at all. So, but he'd signed the deal, and so nobody knew when his contract was expiring, apart from him, seemingly. And obviously, the way their season went, they obviously wanted rid of him, but he had another year in his contract. So, yeah, and then, like I say, he resigned because he had the job at City lined up, and yeah, had a load of shenanigans from that. So.
Wow. Well, we'll get back onto your points because I'm sure you've got more to share on Rochdale in a minute, Mike. But their new manager is Robbie Stockdale. Very much a baptism of fire for his first full-time management role. He's had a couple of caretaker spells. He's been in charge at Grimsby in a joint caretaker spell once, and also he's been caretaker at Sunderland 3 times. I mean, that's a bloody job and a half, isn't it, really? Basically, as long as you're a coach there and you stay there every couple of years, you're going to be like, fancy the job, Robbie, for a few weeks? It's going to be like, isn't it?
He went short in the betting for our job last time.
Yeah, he did.
He was interviewed for it, from what I've been told. Yeah, apparently he's very well thought of as a coach. He's someone who's really impressed in Sunderland in terms of doing that. It's just Sunderland job was always just going to be too big for him for the first job, basically. So I think he always wanted to drop down the leagues and take it one on. I mean, in terms of a squad, there's not much there to. He's got a tough job in his hands. He's helped by the fact that I think Sammy Lee's going to be helping out for a little bit, isn't he? In terms of off the field stuff. I'm not sure if that's actually gone through. I saw some story about it the other day. Summer signings, well, there's not much competition because they've only signed one player. They've signed Sam Graham. He's a 20-year-old defender from Sheffield United. He signed a 2-year deal. He's never played a first team at Bramall Lane, but he did have loan spells at Oldham, Halifax, Central Coast Mariners, and Notts County. And that's a mix and a half, isn't it, really? That's a lovely old job, though, isn't it? Do you fancy a loan spell, Sam? Yeah, where are you going? Australia? Oh, go on then. Why not? Why not, eh? Just lovely, that, isn't it? So, like I said, there's no other signings to pick out because they've not signed anyone else. That's just the reality of it.
Well, they don't have a lot of money, but it's looking like, as of recent years, they've sort of depended on kids a little bit, and I think that this season's going to be much like that as well. Yeah,
I mean, looking at the squad, I mean, it's the off-the-field issues are clearly causing big problems there because, I mean, there's only about, 12 players in there, I think, at the moment, something like that, maybe. And they just badly need some additions. That's the key thing, really. And a week to go, that would concern me. Of the players that are left, there's still a couple of decent players. Matt Dunn, he's always been a good player for them. I've always been impressed whenever he's played against us. Jim McNulty's got bags of experience at the back. I think most clubs at this level would quite happily have him in their defence. So there's like almost like the starts of a spine in there. So you do think maybe, but for me, it's going to be tough. I mean, they've had a sort of weird pre-season. They battered Oldham 5-1 in a friendly. I mean, first of all, why on earth are they playing each other in a pre-season friendly? I never get why League Two clubs would play each other. You're giving too much away, surely, but why Keith would agree to that, I have no idea. It's a strange one, isn't it? The only win came against AFC Fylde, but it should be noted that that's actually the only non-league side they've played. They've otherwise drawn against Fleetwood and Rotherham, and they were beaten quite heavily by Luton, and also 2-1 by Barnsley. So, yeah, the off-the-field issues, Mike, that's the big concern for them, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, they're trying to get investment in, and seemingly there's like a group who are keen to invest, but they're like quite a shady, shall we say, property investment thing, and people aren't too sure of their intentions towards Scotland there. So
the fans' trust are setting in, telling people not to sell the shares and all the rest of it, and they're not selling their shares. But
A fans trust being active.
I know,
How dare they?
How ridiculous!
I know. So it's just a whole thing going on there, really. And my mate, he sort of said he would be more than happy with mid-table, which you don't hear very often from teams who have just come down.
I think, to be honest, mid-table looks a bit ambitious at the moment.
Exactly.
No,
It does.
I think
Absolutely.
they could be really right down at the bottom, possibly.
Yeah,
It's,
definitely.
like I said, with a week to go and a squad that looks very thin and weak, I'd be concerned. I really, really would if I was a Rochdale fan. I don't know what it is with these sort of northern Manchester clubs. It just all seems to end up basket cases at the moment. And then across the city, you've got Salford rubbing their hands. I suppose you could argue they're northern Manchester as well, aren't they? But yeah, there you go. So yeah, Rochdale, I'm not expecting good things for them this season, I'm afraid. I think it's going to be a bit of a slog. Okay, up next, it's the team everyone's going to pick as favourites, aren't they? Surely it's their time. Salford City, it's you, Mike.
Yeah, well, obviously last season we all tipped them to do well, didn't we? And I think what sort of separated them and Bolton, as we've said before, is that Bolton got in proven League Two sort of players and staff and, obviously did the job and went up, whereas Salford tried to sort of get more League One Championship personnel in, which isn't always how you do it in this league.
No.
I mean, they've only made 6 new signings, so they haven't had a complete overhaul. Obviously, Conor McElhaney from Oldham is probably the main
Great
one.
sign, that really.
Yeah, I think given the right service, I think he'll easily get 20+ goals this season. Liam Shepherd and Tom King from Newport as well, which I think could be a little bit of a double whammy in that they're sort of weakening Newport and strengthening themselves a little bit.
Good experienced heads, aren't they? That's the key thing with them.
Definitely. I mean, it's mad that, to think that overall they finished 8th last season. That's
I mean, that is a huge disappointment, isn't it, really, when you look at it? I'm not sure why the sacking the manager with not long to go as well, that was a bit insane. I mean, you look at the other side, Josh Morris, obviously ex-Carlisle there, Loney, for those who vaguely remember him playing for us.
Yeah.
I mean, he's done so well at League One level. That's one of the rare sort of big League One signings they've made this summer, isn't it, really? And Matty Lund's another, I suppose. He's always been a solid performer for Rochdale.
Yeah.
Just decent signings. I mean, they've lost some big players, like you said, the likes of Gibson and George Boyd and people like that. But I think I agree. I think they've signed really well. The only big concern I would have for me, obviously, you said they signed Tom King, but you'd argue he's a bit of a downgrade on Halaki. Obviously, he's left to go to Ipswich because he was fantastic for them last season. He was probably quite comfortably the best goalkeeper in the division, wasn't he? So losing him's a bit of a concern. How have they got on in pre-season then again?
Well, they beat Atherton Collieries 3-0,
Okay.
but they lost to Burnley 4-0. They beat Derby County 2-1, but that's not a lot to go by given the state that they're in right now. Yeah, and they beat Curzon Ashton 1-0 and lost 2-0 to Lincoln. So a bit of a mixed bag of results there, really.
Yeah, and obviously Gary Bowyer's manager there. He's
manager for this month.
He is, yeah. Yeah, but he knows how to get out of this division, doesn't he? And he's obviously brought an ex-Carlisle coach in with him, Billy Barr.
Yeah, exactly, and as well, Billy Barr sort of knows sort of this league. He was at Wrexham last year, wasn't he? So
I think he's been at Blackburn Rovers under 23s, I think, for a bit.
Oh, has he been at Blackburn? Yeah. He was at Wrexham for a bit, I think. But
I think he actually was, to be fair.
So just having people in who are more familiar with this league, I think, will do them a solid. Whether or not I'd have them to win the league is one thing, but you'd surely expect them to be around the promotion places, surely.
I can't see anything other than that, really. Yeah. I think as much as, we'd love them to fail, I can just see them finally kicking on this season. So there you go. Okay, let's move on to the club that you tipped to do badly last season, Dan. So I've given you them again. Scunthorpe United.
And I think it's going to be more of the same. Released a shed load of players.
Yeah.
I think it's about 17 or 18. Those that they've brought in, there's a little bit of experience. The likes of Alex Kenyon from Morecambe knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
Harry Bunn's played a bit. But there's no real standout signing, if you know what I mean.
I'd agree with you there. Looking at the list here, it's not.
And they've got a very, very young squad.
They've been relying on the 23s for a while, haven't they?
Yeah, I think they're the youngest in the league at present. One new player who's come up from the ranks is Dan Gallimore, son of Tony.
Yes, of course.
He's deemed a central midfielder, but I think he can play elsewhere. And he's in his first professional year, so that's a name to keep an eye on. I just can't see them doing much at all.
I think they could be down at the bottom. I think.
Yeah. I think Neil Cox has got a job on his hands here.
Yeah, I'm surprised he kept his job. I mean, maybe it's just they know how difficult it is with all the players going.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is with them.
I mean, Ryan Lofts, their main scoring outlet, and he's a back-to-goal striker, I would call.
Yeah, I mean, they've let so many go this summer as well.
Yeah.
I know they weren't great last season, but when you let that many go,
Yeah.
it does become a bit of a challenge, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So, yeah. How have they got in pre-season?
I don't know, I haven't looked at them.
You not looked at them?
I'll be quite honest, I didn't look at them, but I just think they're going to struggle regardless. I think I said it last season and I'm saying it again this season.
Okay, next up then, it's Stevenage. I think a team that many of us expected to struggle last season. They did early on, but they had a hell of a turnaround after Christmas. And can they keep that up this season, Mike? That's the question.
Yeah, I mean, they're another hard one to call. They've got a young-ish manager in Alex Revel. And yeah, they've signed Jamie Reid, who was at Torquay a couple of years ago and scored 32 goals and won Player of the Year in the National League and all the rest of it. He was at Mansfield last season. So I think he's another one. If he's banging in the goals for them, they could well push on sort of top half even. I've signed Jake Reeves as well, who's played a lot sort of League One level for Bradford and Wimbledon. And Jake Taylor, who was at Exeter for a good while. So, yeah, I mean, obviously 14th last season. I think they'll be looking to push on from that. I mean, I don't think that they're going to upset the playoff bunch, but yeah, I think they'll just sort of be around about there.
I mean, they looked a shambles when we played them at Christmas. They were absolutely awful, and there was talk that Revel was going to lose his job. But then I think they had one more bad result after, and then suddenly they just went on an incredible run. And obviously they beat us again in the second half of the season, didn't they, on that run? And he's done a great job, and I think he's shown that he actually is a decent manager. He just needed a bit of time to get his squad together. You mentioned Jake Taylor there. I mean, they had a great defence anyway. And having someone like him to the defence is only going to make it better. So
yeah, exactly.
They're one of those ones you almost say that there's a group of 3 or 4 dark horses that could really go either way. And I'd agree with you. I think they're potentially one that
I mean, this league as well. It's largely top and bottom of it is having a good defence and good strikers. Your midfield largely doesn't really matter because. You know, a lot of teams will bypass the midfield, and they seem to be solid enough at the back and solid enough up top. So, yeah, we'll see where they go. But their pre-season, they actually beat City 1-0. St Albans City.
Oh God! Stop it! Stop it!
They beat Hitchin Town 1-0. Lost 1-0 to Wickham. Drew 1-1 against Watford and beat Dover 2-0. So another little mixed bag of results there, but
I mean they're fifth favourites. In fact, sorry, they're fourth favourites of relegation.
Yeah, I would never give them that odds. No, never give them that odds.
I think the bookies have got that complete. I think they've looked at how badly they started last season, how they only just finished in mid-table, but they just dropped off at the end of the season. That's all it was.
Yeah.
So I'm very surprised by that. I think it's fair to say. Okay, up next it's Sutton United. Dan, the new boys.
Sutton United with 2 ex-Carlisle players.
Oh.
Dean Bouzasnis in goal. He didn't actually play for us, did he?
No, he's more famous for his behaviour off the pitch, wasn't he? I think it's fair to say.
And he scored a corner, didn't he, in some challenge on Sky Sports or something?
Yes,
with both feet.
2-footed challenge, wasn't it? Or something on Sky on Soccer AM.
And the man who shares my birthday, Richie Bennett, signed for them.
The people's elbow. What a guy.
Interesting move because he went to Stockport, they loaned him to Hartlepool, he started scoring goals and they thought, shit, we need to stop this, and they took him back. which we mentioned in our little episode last week, didn't we? But I can see Sutton doing similar to Harrogate. I think they've got enough to stay up. You know, Buzaznis has got a bit of experience these days. Ben Goodliff is a half-decent centre-back. Craig Eastman's a key man in the middle.
Yeah, was he at Colchester or something like that in the past?
Yeah, ex-Arsenal. He's a really good, solid player. And they've got Omar Bugle up front, who he's not a bad little striker. You know, he's one of them. Looking at the squad, they've got enough. I've just looked at who they've played pre-season. Basically, teams in and around the M25. They all play each other. Won a couple, lost a couple, sort of thing. But I think that there are another who, similar to Orient, they could land a couple on loan from sort of like Millwall, Charlton, Palace type things.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, Omar Bugle was a Lebanon international. Made one appearance for Lebanon. Born in Berlin in Germany, but he's obviously one of those lads who's an immigrant who's moved over there as well. I think, a young kid. Harry Beautyman as well as another player who's a big player for them, isn't he? I think
and they've signed that Enzio Baldwin from Notts County. He's on his day. He can be a player on his day.
So inconsistent though, isn't he?
That's the problem with him. Yeah, hence why he's at this level, sort of thing. You know, he reeks of your traditional League Two winger. You know, we could reel a list of them from Carlisle, but no, I think Matt Gray has got enough about him. I think the squad's got enough about them, and I don't think they'll be flying high, but I don't think they'll be in a relegation battle.
They're favourites to go down, aren't they?
I just don't see that.
No.
Well, to be fair, Swindon aren't listed at present, are they?
No, they are. They're 25. Well, you can get them 33 to 1 to win the league. Incredibly.
Yeah, but they're not listed for relegation.
Yeah.
No, they're not. Maybe, but in terms of promotion, they're up there. That's a really weird one.
Oldham are 6 to 1, by the way, lads. Lump on.
There you go.
Sutton United, I think they'll be all right.
Okay. I mean, the big loss for them is losing that 3G pitch, isn't it? That they have had down, because obviously they had the artificial pitch in non-league are allowed, but if you get to the EFL, you've got to rip it up and start again with a grass pitch, and for them that's a big loss of income as well, as much as anything, because it was a community facility that was used all the time, wasn't it? So, but then there's some arguments that sometimes it gives a bit of an advantage to those teams, possibly. I mean, 2 teams have come up in the last 2 seasons with pitches like that. Bromley are the same; they've been up there.
Our silky smooth passing game would. Doesn't matter if it's on 3G or grass.
We'll have to see, won't we? So there you go. Right, so I've got 2 more now, and then you've got the last one, Dan. So first up, Swindon Town. I mean, I'm going to try and keep this tight, but oh God, I could go on forever about them. They've been an absolute shambles for quite a while now. Last season they started last season okay under John Sheridan, whose spelling charge wasn't the best, let's just say. They dropped off massively in the second half of the season, and they were basically down the relegation zone for much of the second half of the campaign. As I mentioned there, Sheridan's time in charge was just appalling. I think there was an article on The Athletic the other day that I was reading, and apparently there was one game where Sheridan was nowhere to be seen, and the players didn't know what the team was. And it was coming up to like 2:30 or something, and they only found out because it was on the tannoy.
I think it was about 2:50 he walked in and put a list up. Said, right, there's your team, and then walked out.
But the thing is that they knew it because it had been on the tannoy. He hadn't told them. I think he's an odd bloke, Sheridan. I think some clubs he does okay at. Other clubs it just doesn't work for him, doesn't he? He did actually all right with us.
I was just about to say, I think he actually did all right for us.
Yeah, he's one of those ones. He needs the right environment, doesn't he?
He didn't get on with certain members of our squad, did he? That was the problem here.
Yeah, that was the big problem.
And then when Chesterfield came calling, he was always going.
Of course he was. Ben Garner's been given the manager's job here. It's his second managerial role after Bristol Rovers. Didn't end very well there. He's one of these people, he's not got any playing experience. He's never been a player. But he's a very well thought of coach. Apparently he was mentored by Jose Mourinho when he was doing his coaching badges. And he's had coaching roles at Palace and West Brom. But he's one of these people who, it's great to say you're a coach and you can develop players, but there's a big difference between that and being a manager. or at least a head coach at a football league level, isn't it? That's where your bread and butter is, and it can be tough. And it's a last chance saloon for him, I think, in terms of it's very similar to Mike Jolly. Was it Mike Jolly, wasn't it? He was at Barrow last season.
Yeah.
So it's a risky appointment for them, for a club in mess, but it might be a situation where that's the only person they can give the job, really. So summer signings, they've not really made any. This is the big concern. They've only got 12 players in their squad right now.
It's all right. They've had Harry McCurdy on trial.
Well, I'd imagine he's probably going to sign at some point this week, isn't he? There's an argument Pierce Sweeney was their best signing, but he's already gone. You can't really include him. But Ben Gladwin's come back for a fourth spell as a player. He's got a bit of experience. He was with MK Dons last season.
I think I was reading that they've actually got the new owner now, haven't they?
Yes, he's taken over now. That's all sorted.
Yeah.
But the problem is they've only got a week to get all these players in. And
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
imagine not all the trials are going to be the best, are they, either? So
it could be that we don't actually see them start to click until sort of autumn time.
Well, my feeling is you might find they're going to really, really struggle first half of the season, and then they're going to bring in a load of players in January to try and get them.
Yeah. I could see them having plenty enough to stop up, sort of thing.
Yeah, the key men in the squad at the moment are probably Captain Dion Conroy and Vice Captain Matthew Bowdry. They're the two ones because they've got experience. Other than that, they're mainly kids. And yeah, I mean, I think they've signed a couple of goalkeepers, Lewis Ward and Joe Wollacott, but they're both inexperienced. They haven't played many games. And Tyrese Simpson on loan from Ipswich, he's potential at the moment, basically. That's all he is. And relying on that to score your goals could be a worry. I can genuinely see them struggling. I mean, pre-season's been a shambles for them, absolute shambles, and they had to rearrange their game against Swindon Supermarine because they didn't have enough players to play against their local non-league neighbours, and that's the only game when they rearrange it that they've won in pre-season. I mean, other than that, they've lost to Weymouth and Hungerford Town and drawn with Melksham Town. There you go, once again mentioning them, and they lost to Peterborough in the final game.
Should we all go and watch Melksham Town next season?
I think definitely we're going to have to now. They're our new non-league. We'll keep an eye on them, and we'll update everyone as we go along through the season.
Yeah.
You mentioned there McCurdy's been on trial. The ownership issue is now sorted, but it's dragged on so long, and I really can see it being a long, long, tough season for them. I really, really can. It'll be interesting to see how they get on. Up next, it's me again, Tranmere Rovers. Last season, a big disappointment for them, I think it's fair to say. I think they anticipated going straight back up to League One. They felt hard done by the whole points per game thing. I mean, for me, it sounds harsh, but it's a bit tough shit, you know. It's just the circumstances, the way it is. Couldn't be helped. Bringing Mickey Mellon back as manager, there was a massive, massive plus for them, you'd think. He's a legend from his first time in charge of his double promotion he won there. Every club he's been at in England, he's won promotion. So he won it at Fleetwood Town, he won it at Shrewsbury Town, obviously he won at Tranmere. Dundee United last season, I think he did a solid enough job up there, Dan. I didn't really keep an eye on how Scottish football got on last year.
Yeah.
I think the chance to come back to Tranmere was too big an opportunity, and apparently he's bought a house on the Wirral now. I wonder where he's bought it, Mike. I mean, I imagine he's not bought in Caldy like Rafa Benitez, very posh up that way. More likely maybe I don't know, Prenton, maybe somewhere Woodchurch over that way, possibly. I don't know.
Yeah, certainly don't want a house in Birkenhead, put it that way.
Absolutely not. Stand out for me, signing Callum McManaman. He's a player, you know, everyone expected big things from him in his early career. He won the FA Cup with Wigan, he was brilliant. Was he man of the match, actually?
I think he was man of the match in that final, yeah.
And he was outstanding. He went to West Brom and he had a spell at Sunderland, and he just never quite worked out. He's just come back from a spell in Australia with Melbourne Victory. He's 30 now, but you'd expect him to be one of the best. But it's quite reminiscent, actually, I think, slightly older, though, of Zach Clough, isn't it, coming to us? I think in terms of how you'd expect him to get on. I don't know. I mean, they've made quite a few signings. They've been very busy in the transfer market. Interesting ones, Elliot Nevitt, who's come in from non-league side Warrington Rylands. He's meant to be quite an exciting player. I think he's been around the non-league circuit a little bit. I think he's about 22, 23. Sam Foley from Motherwell's another interesting one. And Joe Maguire from Accrington. I think he's won promotion at this level before, hasn't he? So he's a decent signing. And in terms of the squad makeup, though, losing James Vaughan, that's a big blow, you'd think, isn't
Massive,
it? Any club at this level to lose a player of his quality and nous and goal-scoring ability. Obviously, he's retired. But But they've still got some good players there. Corey Blackett-Taylor was excellent against us down at Prenton Park. Goalkeeper Scott Davids is still a quality performer. And Peter Clark, he turns 40 later this year, and he didn't look 40 when he played against us in the league. I have to say, we said in the preview for that game he's someone you could target, but he didn't look like a player you could target, did he? He's a really good performer at this level. Like I said, last season was a disappointment. Mike Jackson didn't do that great as manager. They brought in Keith Hill to replace him. Did okay at first, but I don't think the fans ever took to him, and they properly tailed off and ended up just about making the playoffs. And they sacked him before the playoffs, didn't they? And gave the caretaker the job, and he couldn't quite get it over the line against Morecambe. And yeah, there you go. I didn't actually mention in the signings there. They signed Nathaniel Knight Percival from Morecambe as well. There's the next Carlisle link for you there. Interesting signing.
The issue for me with Tranmere is I just can't see where the goals are going to come from. You mentioned Vaughan's a massive loss, but I mean, as things stand with their squad list, I don't think they have someone with the number 9 shirt, which would indicate that they're trying to bring someone else in. But that's massive for them. Like, they need someone to get the goals. Otherwise, I really don't think they're going to do very well.
No, that's the bit that would concern me potentially. Pre-season's they've done okay. They beat Rangers, and Dan, you'll know better than me. Was that a strong Rangers side they beat?
Yes and no. It was a brilliant goal that won it. I think it was just one of them. You get those sort of scores. And Rangers had plenty of chances, and just they didn't really have many strikers playing. But no, it'll certainly give them a bit of a boost.
Yeah, they've got the second oldest squad in the division after Harrogate at 27.7 years average age, but that is boosted quite a bit by goalkeeper Joe Murphy and Clark at centre back, who are both 39. So that pushes it way up.
Joe Murphy, I think, famously threw a hissy fit when Kieran Westwood got called up to the Republic of Ireland squad because he was like, because he's not Irish. And Joe Murphy, who actually is Irish, was like fuming about it in the papers.
There you go. Obviously, Jay Spearing in midfield as well as a really good performer, and you saw how good he was last season when he played against us. So I think I agree with you, Mike. I think that the key thing missing for them is a good striker. They've signed this young lad from Liverpool, Paul Glatzel, the German lad. If he can maybe get firing, possibly he might be the big difference, but it's a lot to expect on a young lad's shoulders, I think. And they've signed the big lad as well, haven't they, from Salford. Desiree, I can never pronounce his name.
Daiserworth or something.
Daiserworth or whatever you call him anyway. But they've signed him, and I think he's one potentially who could, if they can get the right service to him, he could get a few goals because he's a big lad, isn't he? He's what, 6'3", 6'4". So yeah, I think maybe one more strike is the key thing missing.
I always think he got a little bit of a hard time at Salford because they always seem to bring in higher paid players before him, and I think he got a little bit unfair there, so he could have a decent season, that kid.
He could well. Finally, Dan, on to the last one, Walsall. It's your last one, and I think personally, this is a team that could do fairly well this year.
Yeah, they've got an owner who seems really well liked, even though they didn't do too well last season. And they've now got Matt Taylor as manager.
The other Matt Taylor.
Yeah, the one who used to be in goal of the month a lot.
Scored the goal of the season for Portsmouth, didn't he, from 40 yards?
Yeah. He's come from Tottenham under-18s to have a go in proper management, and he's assisted by Neil MacDonald.
Yeah, there's a Carla link.
So, it reminds me very much of the Paul Simpson, Dennis Booth setup, which we had.
Yeah.
And I'm just, my page has changed. I'm looking at who they brought in. Brought in one or two good players, Joss Labady, Connor Wilkinson, Manny Mont,
Stephen Ward.
Yeah.
In the Premier League.
Zach Mills, there's some good names there. I do wonder if it'll maybe be a season too early for them, in my opinion. But I certainly think they'll be on the edges, certainly.
I mean, Labadie as well is a proven performer at this level, isn't he? He's done so well at Newport the last few years. He's a bit of a nutter, but he's a good player at this level. Yeah. My concern when I look through the squad, though, is that they look a bit thin up front, don't they? Wilkinson's a great player, but if you're only relying on him, if he gets an injury, you're potentially in a bit of bother,
Yeah,
aren't you?
they've got 3 players listed as forwards. So.
I think a couple of the midfielders are more forward players, aren't
But
they? What's
again,
Davey?
Walsall are one of these clubs again who are probably waiting on West Brom, Birmingham, Villa, etc. You know, they're in a prime position to get a couple of lads in from these. So,
But it's noticeable.
All in all, well, I was just going to say, all in all, there haven't been many loan signings yet. I think.
I was about to say the same thing.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
I think a lot of clubs are holding on to players, aren't they, for a little bit longer than they normally would.
Hayden White's still there.
Yeah.
But I wonder if Zach Mills will maybe overtake him this season.
Possibly. How have they got on in pre-season?
The friendlies haven't been too good.
No.
They got beat off Crystal Palace the other week. Aston Villa turned them over. I suppose that's to be expected. They give Kidderminster a bit of a shoe-in. Ozadabi got a couple. And they got beat 2-0 at Cheltenham
Yeah.
over the weekend. But
I think Cheltenham have kept much of their squad together in league.
Yeah,
haven't they? So
yeah,
I think
yeah.
they're going to be a solid team. Up
yeah,
that level,
yeah.
I think.
So no, I think Walsall. I think they'll do all right. I don't think they've quite got enough to be there yet. But with a little bit of if they're doing all right, maybe additions in January. You never know.
Yeah. Okay, then let's all together have a quick look through Cal United before we do our predictions and finish off the episode. Pre-season's gone okay, hasn't it? Considering the level of opposition and that kind of thing. We'd like to maybe have played a couple of better teams, but Mike, I'd argue I'm pretty happy with how it's gone.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're to compare to last season, obviously midfield is the same, isn't it? You know,
Yeah.
Defence possibly weaker, but
Not as experienced, is it?
Yeah, well, I mean, compared to say the start of last season before we signed Bennett, there's an argument that it isn't any weaker. You know, because we still have McDonald, we still have Hayden. You know, and obviously the two
Feeney, don't you? Basically,
yeah, and you know the two fullbacks. I think you know if they're fit, and you know Tanner and Armour, no issues there whatsoever. But it's just a little bit of depth is the issue. But up front, I think no one's going to argue when I say that our options up front are better than what we had going into last season.
I don't know about that. I think because we all know how good Coyote was and how important he was to how we played as much as anything. There's still some doubts about who's going to be starting up there. Is it going to be Manny? Is it going to be Alessandra? Is it going to be Abrahams? I still think we're not quite sure. We always knew Coyote, if he was fit, was going to start last season. I think we always knew Patrick was likely to start as well.
Yeah.
It's
well,
one of
I mean,
ones.
it's not entirely clear what system we're going to go with, if we're going to do the same 4-3-3. Or, I mean, Zach Clough has said he likes to play as a number 10.
Yeah.
So would we maybe go for that sort of 4-2-3-1 thing and have sort of him in behind or Alessandra in behind even?
If you put in Clough as a 10, does Mellish play?
Yeah.
It's tough, isn't it? It's tough, isn't it? Mellish might cancel out the team.
On rating, Clough starts ahead of Mellish.
So then maybe you play Clough on one of the wings and just tell him you've got a bit of freedom here. But then the pressure's then maybe on someone like Mellish or Riley to cover that area.
Yeah,
He's not going to track back as much. That's
Or is this season where we see Mellish in his final form as a number 9 and scores 40 goals?
I think are we entirely in agreement then that basically Clough's the best signing of the summer for us? I think it's
Yeah. And I honestly, the fact we got him on a 2-year deal, I think the conversation will have went, look, you've dropped down, sign a 2-year, enjoy yourself. If you do us all right, we won't stand in your way next summer. You'll get your move, we'll get some money, everyone's happy.
Yeah.
Reading between the lines, I don't know if I'm looking too much into it here, but I think some of his injuries, I think it's sort of mental health a little bit. I think he sort of seemed to be suggesting he just wants to get back to playing with a smile on his face.
Yeah.
Which, you know...
I think he'd be more cautious about his next move, definitely, where it happens.
Yeah, because I think some players, you know, they take knocks all the time, but if they're enjoying the football, they'll gladly play. But if you're not enjoying your football, you'll say, oh, I'm injured, I can't play this week. Do you know what I mean? And but I think we're talking about Clough, but I think Abrams is a very good signing as well. You know, it's easy to sort of gloss over that, but I think Clough he's going to score goals and create goals, and I think given the right service, Abrams could well get a load for us.
I don't think people realise how much football Abrams has played as well.
Yeah, he's played a lot. At this level as well.
It's made out as though he's only played a few games. I think he's got about 150 career games. And over 100 are in League Two. The rest being all cups and that. You know, I'm like, you know, he's got a lot of football under his belt for his age. And yes, I know he played out wide a little bit last season, but, you know, he knows what it's about, huh?
Definitely does. Okay, lads, then let's move on to the bit everyone's been waiting for, the bit they get to mock us for. It's the predictions.
I have my notes.
Okay, so here we go. So first up, lads, we'll do this in alphabetical order each time in terms of who says what. So first up, champions. Dan, who are you going for?
Tranmere Rovers.
Oh, so you're not worried about the lack of striker there then? Right,
No.
Okay.
I think they might bring someone else in time.
Okay. Me, I'm going to go, and our old friends at Heaven's Devils podcast are going to be happy about this. Forest Green Rovers, I think, because I just think they've kept generally the core in. I think they'll get a couple more loan signings, and if they can keep Jamil Matt fit, I just can see them kicking on. I think they'll be champions. Mike?
Yeah, well, I'm just going to be boring and say Salford and follow the bookies thing. I think they've done enough now to sort of... They haven't gone too mad this summer.
They surely know what it's about now, don't they?
Yeah, surely, yeah.
Okay. Promoted. Dan, who are you going for?
I've got the two teams promoted as Forest Green and Salford. Not really amazing choices, but I'm with you on Forest Green. I think they've kept the majority. They've got the setup. I think it's possibly their turn. And again, as we've just said with Mike and Salford there, you know, it's surely they know what it's about this time.
Yeah, you'd think so. Promoted, I'm going to go for... I've got the same top three, just in a different order to you, Dan. I've got Tranmere and Salford. Yeah. Again, like you, I just think Tranmere will get a striker in, or that lad from Liverpool will turn out to be decent.
Yeah.
And Salford, like I said, I think they won't quite have enough to be... I think in keeper they've weakened themselves. I don't think King's as good as Caldi. So, yeah, I'm going for that as top three. Who are you going for, Mike?
See, I'm mixing it up a little bit. I've gone for Forest Green and Bristol Rovers. So, yeah. I mean, Bristol Rovers are one of them. They'll either be great or they won't. And, yeah, that's what I'm going for.
Okay. Playoffs. And we want the winner as well. Dan, who are you going for?
In alphabetical order.
Yep, same for me.
Yeah. Bradford.
Yep.
Carlisle.
Yep.
Mansfield.
Yep.
And Leyton Orient.
Okay. Decent selection. Let's say. Who are you going to win it?
Winner? Well, I've got to say Carlisle.
Got to be, hasn't it? Right. Do you want to hear mine? This will shock you. I've gone for Bradford. I've gone for Carlisle. I've gone for Mansfield. And I've gone for Walsall as my fourth one. Just to mix it up a little bit. I think Taylor will have a decent run there. I really do. And again, Carlisle will win it, of course. Got to go for Carlisle. Mike?
See, I've gone for Bradford. I've gone for not Forest Green, Newport. Us, obviously, and Port Vale. And obviously us to win.
Oh, there you go.
Wembley.
There you go. No, fair enough. Relegated, Dan.
Alphabetical order, Oldham and Scunthorpe.
Ooh. I'm nearly the same as you. I've gone for the other North Manchester club. I've got Rochdale and Scunthorpe. I just don't think Rochdale will sort their off-the-field issues out in time. And like you said, Scunthorpe just look weak. They really do look weak.
Yeah.
Mike?
I've gone for Swindon and Oldham. Yeah.
I just think Swindon will just get enough in January. That's the difference I've got.
I think with the relegation issue, it's going to take a few weeks to see where these, you know, your Oldhams, your Rochdales, your Swindons, where they're at come the end of the transfer window.
Yeah.
And it might take them a few weeks to get going, and January will be big. You know, I mean, it's probably one you could revisit come January.
Yeah. Dark Horse is up next. Dan, what have you gone for there?
Well, I've said Orient in the playoffs, so Orient are my dark horse.
I mean, I'd probably say Walsall for me, but actually, looking through, maybe, just maybe, I think Stevenage might kick on again. They might be just outside the playoffs, but I just fancy them to do a bit better than people expect, maybe.
Yeah.
There you go. Mike?
Yeah, well, I opted for Stevenage, but I was very close to putting Barrow, but I opted for Stevenage.
Steady.
Okay. Unexpected strugglers. A team that I think maybe people are expecting to do well, but will actually find themselves struggling down near the bottom. Who have you gone for?
I've gone for a team that Mike's alluded it could be shit or bust, basically, and Bristol Rovers. I just... The elephant in the room just hangs over them, you know. I mean, it shouldn't, but if it does... And I was speaking to a Bristol Rovers fan a few weeks back, and he said they were abysmal last season. They really were. I know they've had to clear out, they bought them in, but with so many players, it might take time to click.
Yeah. For me, I was very close to picking Exeter, but I just think they've always just got that little bit extra in terms of the youth. A lot of people are thinking Port Vale will do well, and I think Clark actually might find it a bit tougher in his full season in charge. But actually, if I'm going to pick anyone, probably Northampton. I know they've got them around about mid-table. I think they could be right down near the bottom, just because they've got an experienced manager. Mike, who have you gone for?
I've gone for Tranmere. I think they're around about sort of 5th, 6th favourite with a lot of people, and I just think their lack of striker. I mean, they may bring one in yet, which would be a game changer, but as things stand, certainly them for me.
Top scorer, Dan, who are you going for?
Zach Clough is going to rule this division. He takes penalties.
Free kicks.
There's half a dozen already. He'll probably take free kicks. There's another 2 or 3. You could be at double figures before he's scored a goal in normal play.
That's a decent shout, that. Who am I going to pick? This is a tough one. I think there's a lot of decent shouts, but it's always something you don't expect quite often, isn't it? I just I don't know. I think I quite fancy Johnson and Mansfield to get a few. Danny Johnson, I'm going to go with Mansfield.
I could see that because we're expecting a lot from Mansfield, aren't we?
Yes, I can. I really can see him scoring a few, so I'm going to go Danny Johnson and Mansfield. Who are you going for, Mike?
Well, I'm going to double down on my prediction that Bristol Rovers will do all right, and I'm going to say Brett Pittman.
Brett Pittman. Okay, fair enough. That's what you've gone for. First manager sacked.
I haven't picked one on the basis that there's 3 or 4 clubs who we don't know what's happening yet. And there's inexperienced managers kicking about. You know, one of them could just jack if something doesn't happen at a club, and I think it's a lot harder to predict. You were all expecting me to say keeper, weren't you?
Yeah, you absolute coward. Go on, say it.
No. He'll keep in a job till the new year when it'll be too late.
You lose points for that one then. I'm going for Cox at Scunthorpe. I think it's going to be a real nightmare for them. I really do. So I'm going for Neil Cox. Mike, who are you going for?
Even though I said Salford will win the league, Gary Bowyer.
Be sacked and they'll bring someone who actually knows what they're doing finally. Gary Neville will take over and do it himself, won't he?
The physio quit this week, didn't he? And apparently Neville had a right go on his LinkedIn about him, saying basically outright called him everything but, well, called him a snake without calling him a snake. When you look at someone and you just don't trust them and the letter goes in, that sort of crack.
Blimey. There you go. Well, finally, we're going to do a few little Carl United-based predictions here. I think we sort of all know where we're going to finish. We all think we're going to finish in the playoffs and win it. So there you go. Don't have to do that one. Top scorer for United, Dan, Zach Clough, clearly, because you've picked him to be top scorer in the division.
And player of the season.
Yep, I'm going to go Abrahams for us. Little shout out. I think Sam Fishburne might get a few as well. You know, I think if he gets on a little run,
I'd love to see it.
You would love to see, wouldn't you? Player of the season. I mean, Zach Clough for me. I was like, Mike, you've got to pick your top scorer, haven't it? Ahead of us.
Yeah, well, top scorer, player of the season. I've gone Zach Clough for both
there you
of
go.
them. Yeah.
Double down. I'm guessing you're the same, Dan.
Yeah.
I'm the same. I'm going to go with Zach Clough for player of the season too. Most improved. Are you going to go for there, Dan?
I'm going to go for Jack Armour. I think he's on the upward trajectory. He started off as second choice. He got in the team. He played out of position. He played well. He looks as though he's grown again this summer. He's getting bigger and bigger. Like I've said several times, I think he moves to centre back eventually in a couple of years. But I think Preston will really regret letting this lad go.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that in terms of regretting it. I want to go for Josh Dixon, but I mean, it's starting from a very low point there. I think that's the problem. So, I'm going to go Gimme Toure. I think he's going to be most improved. I think you're going to see a different player this season. I really do, and I've been championing him all of pre-season. I think he looks a different player, looks happier. Gimme Toure is going to be my most improved player. Mike, who are you going for?
I've gone for exactly the same. I think we've alluded to it in other episodes, haven't we? That I think the fans sort of roaring him on as he's one-on-one against an impact this season, and I think the attacking players around him, I think it'll definitely help him out. So yeah, it's got to be Toure for me.
Give me Toure. Finally, lads, how do you think we're going to get on the FA Cup and the League Cup? Are your predictions rounds we're going to get to?
FA Cup, I think everyone's happy if we make the third round and get a decent game.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think third round's capable.
And League Cup, I think we've got a hard game, haven't we?
I think we'll make the second round. I think we will, because I just think Sheffield United won't take it seriously.
That's the flip side of it, but I think we might get. To be honest, are we really bothered? Because there's not the really big clubs in the second round anyway.
No, definitely not.
So,
there you go, Mike. To round it up,
well, I've gone both tournaments second round. I just think it'll be I think we'll focus more in the league this season, which will culminate in our obvious playoff final victory.
Is that second round of the FA Cup where we go out to someone who then draw Man United away?
Definitely, yeah. That's just written in the stars.
Yeah.
There it goes. There you go. Well, that's it then, lads. So it's been a bit of a slog, this one. It's going to be a two-parter, I think it's fair to say. So,
put it out as a 2-hour. Put a warning at the start.
Hey,
give the people what they want.
My brother will be able to do a marathon run listening to this one.
He's a runner though, he'll be alright.
He is, he'll be fine. So there you go, guys. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much, guys, for spending 2 hours with me talking about how things are going to go this season. I think we're all excited, aren't we, for that first game against Colchester. And I think, to be honest, when you look at the start we've got, it's not a bad one to have, is it? Them and Swindon, the first 2 games. It's, touch wood here, famous last words, but of all the starts we could have had, I think most people would have been pretty happy with that, wouldn't they? Yeah. There you go. Sums it up pretty well. Right, as ever, guys, thank you everyone for listening. You can contact us on Twitter at Brunton Bugle, by email bruntonbugle@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook as well. We've got our own Facebook page now, and we're always on the Be Just and Fear Not Facebook page, having a crack about all things Carlisle United. If you want to mock our predictions and tell us we're wrong, feel free, do it as much as you want. Just make sure you subscribe and make sure you give us a good review as well in the usual places wherever you get your podcast. Lads, thanks very much for your time on this Sunday night, and let's look forward to the game next week. Up the Blues.
Up the Blues.